He said it on a Tuesday morning, over coffee. In the kitchen of the house they had shared for 9 years. He set down his mug, looked at her across the table, and said, "You are a financial burden. You have always been a financial burden. And I am done." He was gone by noon, took his car, his laptop, his golf clubs, and 9 years of shared life and reduced it, on his way out the door, to 4 words. "You'll be fine, Zara." She was not fine. She was sitting on the kitchen floor by 2 o'clock, back against the cabinets, her whole life reorganizing itself around an absence she had not been prepared for. She had $47 in her personal account, a business idea she had been working on for 3 years that he had called repeatedly a hobby, a laptop with a cracked screen, and a humiliation so complete she could not yet find the edges of it. 7 days later, her phone rang. A journalist. "Forbes, Ms. Mensah, we'd like to feature you in our next issue. 30 under 40 women entrepreneurs to watch. Your name came up in 3 separate conversations this week. Would you be available for an interview?" She looked at the kitchen where he had left her. She thought about the word burden. She thought about $47. She thought about 3 years of building something in the margins of a marriage that did not believe in her. "Yes," she said, "I'm available. This is the story of what happened in the 7 days between those 2 moments, and what happened in the 3 years before them, and what happened in the year that followed. Stay until the end, because this story is not about revenge. It is about what a woman builds when she finally stops asking for permission." Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you are watching from. We would love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. To understand what Zara built, you need to understand what she was building from, not just materially, psychologically. Because the women who build things from nothing are never building from nothing. They are building from the specific rubble of what was taken from them, or what they gave away, or what they were told they could not have. Zara Mensah was 36 years old, the daughter of Ghanaian immigrants who had come to the United States in the 1990s and built a life in Charlotte, and North Carolina with the particular intentionality of people who understand that nothing is guaranteed and therefore everything must be earned. Her father had run a small accounting firm from the 2nd bedroom of their apartment until it outgrew the apartment and moved into an office, and then outgrew the office and moved into a building. Her mother had taught mathematics at the local community college for 22 years and had the specific patience of a woman who had explained the same concept 1,000 different ways and understood that confusion was never the student's failure. It was always an invitation to find a better explanation. Zara had grown up watching her parents build things. She had assumed she would build things too. She had a degree in marketing from UNC Charlotte and 8 years of experience in brand strategy before she met David Cole at a professional networking event in Uptown Charlotte when she was 27. David was handsome and successful and spoke with the authority of someone who had never doubted that his opinions were worth hearing. He was a senior portfolio manager at a financial services firm. He made good money, and he knew it. And he was not ungenerous about it in the early years, taking her to restaurants she would not have chosen on her own salary, vacations she would not have planned, a life that looked from the outside like exactly the kind of life you were supposed to want. She had loved him, or she had loved the version of him that existed in the first 3 years before the slow diminishment began. The diminishment was so gradual she could not name when it started. It was in the way he spoke about her work. Her job at the marketing agency was fine, he said, for now, but it wasn't exactly a career, was it? Not compared to what he was doing. She was good at what she did, he supposed, but the ceiling was low and the pay was mediocre, and had she considered something with more, and here he would pause and choose a word carefully, trajectory? She had been a senior strategist, managing accounts worth $12 million. He had made her feel like she was playing with finger paints. By year 4, she had started to internalize it. By year 6, she had left her position at the agency, ostensibly to pursue her own business, which David had encouraged in the specific way of someone who wants you to fail at something so you will stop reaching, and had discovered that without the structure of employment and with David's subtle undermining of every concrete step she took, the business had stayed exactly what he called it: a hobby. The idea had come to her in year 7 of the marriage. She had been doing market research for a client David had connected her with. A small favor, he had said, barely disguising his condescension. And in the research, she had identified a gap so clear and so specific that she had stared at her screen for 40 minutes before she understood what she was looking at. African-American women aged 35 to 55 were the fastest-growing demographic of entrepreneurs in the United States, and they were also systematically underserved by the existing market of business education resources, not in quantity, but in specificity. The resources that existed were designed for either corporate climbers or tech startup founders. They did not speak to the woman running a service business from her kitchen table. They did not address the specific combination of cultural context, limited capital, and community obligation that shaped how Black women built businesses. Zara knew this demographic. She was this demographic. She had spent 7 years being this demographic and finding nothing that spoke to her specific situation. She built a curriculum, not quickly, not all at once, in the margins. Early mornings before David woke up, late nights after he fell asleep, weekends when he was golfing, which was most of them. She built a framework for teaching business fundamentals specifically contextualized for Black women entrepreneurs. She tested it with 3 women she knew: her friend Abina, her cousin Nana, a woman named Patricia from her church who had been trying to scale her catering business for 5 years and getting nowhere. The results stunned her. Within 3 months of working through her curriculum, Abina had landed her first corporate client. Nana had tripled her online sales. Patricia had secured a contract with a local hospital system that would sustain her business for 3 years. Zara had something real. She knew she had something real. She told David. His response was the response of a man who had spent 7 years positioning himself as the ceiling of her ambition. "It's a nice idea, Zara, but teaching people how to run businesses when you've never successfully run one yourself, don't you think there's a credibility problem?" She had not argued. She had gone back to her laptop and kept building, in silence, in the margins, for 3 years, until the Tuesday morning when he set down his coffee and said the word that would become the foundation of everything she built: burden. She had known it was coming. Not the specific morning, not the specific words, but the shape of it had been visible for months. The way he spoke to her less, the way he came home later, the way he stopped asking about her work with even the performative interest he had once deployed. She had known and had told herself she was imagining it, had told herself she was being paranoid, had told herself that her instincts were unreliable. 9 years of being told that had done its work. He poured his coffee. She was already at the table with hers. She had been up since 5, working. She was always up at 5, working in the hours before he woke, and the day became about managing his presence instead of building her own. She had not told him how far the business had come. She had learned not to tell him things he would minimize. He sat down across from her. He looked at her with the expression of a man who has rehearsed something. "I've been thinking," he said. She put down her mug. "David, I need to say this." He held up a hand. "I've been thinking about us, about where we are. And I need to be honest with you because I think we've both been avoiding this conversation." She waited. "You are a financial burden," he said. "You have always been a financial burden, as I have been carrying this household for 9 years. Your project, or whatever you're calling it this month, has produced nothing. You contribute nothing financially, and I am tired." She looked at him. She thought about the 5 o'clock mornings, The 3 women whose businesses had been transformed. The curriculum she had refined and tested and refined again. The 12 people now enrolled in her pilot program. The $57,000 in revenue she had generated in the past 4 months and had not told him about, because she knew he would find a way to make it smaller. She thought about all of it. She said nothing. "I'm not trying to be cruel," David continued, in the tone of someone who very much was. "I'm being honest. You are smart, Zara. You are capable. But you have been chasing this dream for 3 years and it's going nowhere, and I can't keep subsidizing a life that isn't working. Are you leaving me? I think it's time." He said it like a business decision, like a portfolio he was divesting. "I've spoken to a lawyer. I'll be fair. The house..." "Keep it." He blinked. "What? Keep the house. I don't want it." She stood up. Her hands were very steady. "I'll be out by the end of the week." He had expected tears. She could see it in his face, the slight recalibration of someone whose script had just been departed from. "Zara, I'm not trying to..." "I know what you're trying to do," she said, "and I'm telling you it's already done. You don't need to try anymore." She picked up her coffee and her laptop, and she went to the room she had been using as her office, and she closed the door. She sat down, and she looked at her screen. She did not cry. Not then. She would cry later, in the car, parked in a grocery store parking lot, for 45 minutes with the kind of grief that belongs to the end of something you spent years trying to save. But in that room, with the door closed and David moving through the house doing whatever a man does when he has just dismantled 9 years over a cup of coffee. She opened her laptop, and she got to work. She sent 3 emails. The first to Abena. "I need a place to stay for a while. Can we talk?" The second to her accountant, a woman named Gloria who had been working with her for 8 months and was the only person besides Abena and Nana who knew the full picture of what the business had become. "Emergency call today. Whenever you're free." The third to a woman named Doctor. A Sandra Pierce who ran the largest network of black women entrepreneurs in the Southeast and who had reached out to Zara 6 weeks ago after one of her program graduates had mentioned her name in an interview. Zara had not responded to that email yet. She had been waiting. She was not sure what she had been waiting for. She responded now. "Dr. Pierce, I apologize for the delay. I would love to connect. I am available this week." She pressed send. She looked at the closed door. She heard David's footsteps, his voice on a phone call, the particular efficiency of a man executing a plan he had already made. She opened a new document, and she wrote the business plan she had been carrying in her head for 3 years. Day 1. She wrote the full business plan from 7 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. 41 pages. Market analysis, target demographic, revenue model, growth projections, the curriculum framework, the case studies from her pilot program, the testimonials from the 12 women currently enrolled. It was the most complete and honest accounting of what she had built that she had ever produced. She had never put it all in one place before, because putting it in one place made it real in a way that felt dangerous when you lived with someone who would use your reality as evidence of your inadequacy. David had left for the office at 8:30. She had barely noticed. At 2, she called Gloria. "Tell me where we are," she said. "Officially?" Gloria's voice carried the particular satisfaction of someone who had been waiting to say this. "Revenue for the past 4 months is $57,400. You have 12 active program participants at $4,000 each. You have 3 corporate inquiry emails you haven't responded to. And you have a wait list of 31 people for the next cohort. 31? 31. Since the podcast episode aired last month, she had done a podcast interview 6 weeks ago. A small show, maybe 8,000 listeners, hosted by a woman who ran a business coaching practice in Atlanta. She had almost canceled twice because David had made a comment about her spending time on things that don't pay. That podcast had generated 31 waitlist signups. "Gloria," she said, "I need to set up a business account that is not connected to any joint accounts. Can you help me with that today?" "I've been waiting for you to ask," Gloria said. "I'll send you the paperwork in an hour." Bat music. Something opening up. Day 2. She moved to Abina's house. Abina Asante had been her closest friend since their freshman year of college and had the particular gift of making a guest room feel like a home without making the person in it feel like a guest. She made jollof rice. She poured wine. She sat across the kitchen table from Zara and said, "Tell me everything." So Zara did, not just the Tuesday morning, all of it. 3 years of building something in secret because the person who was supposed to believe in her had become the primary obstacle to her believing in herself. When she finished, Abena was quiet for a moment. $57,000, she said, "in 4 months. And he called you a burden." "Yes, while you were making $57,000. He didn't know. I know he didn't know." Abena's voice was very even. "But you knew, and you kept going anyway, in secret, in the margins, while managing his ego and his house and his narrative about who you were." Zara looked at her wine glass. "I want you to hear something," Abena said. "What you built in the last 3 years, you built it in the worst possible conditions, with someone actively minimizing you, with no support, with the psychological weight of being told constantly that you were failing." She paused. "Imagine what you're going to build now." Pause. Zara did not sleep much that night, not from grief, from the plans that kept arriving faster than she could write them down. Day 3. The call with Dr. Sandra Pierce. Dr. Pierce was 52 years old, the founder of the Elevate Network, a community of 11,000 Black women entrepreneurs across 15 states that hosted conferences, facilitated mentorship, provided micro-grants, and had been profiled in 3 national publications in the past 2 years. She had called Zara because a graduate of Zara's pilot program, a woman named Katura, who ran a logistics consulting practice and had doubled her revenue in 8 months after completing the curriculum, had described her program in terms that Dr. Pierce found remarkable. "I don't say this casually," Dr. Pierce told her on the call. "I've seen a lot of programs. I've invested in a lot of programs. What you've built is different. It's not generic. It's not recycled. It speaks specifically to the women it's designed for. Thank you. I'm not complimenting you. I'm making an assessment." Dr. Pierce's voice was warm but precise. "I want to present your program to the full Elevate Network. We have a spring conference in Atlanta. 3,000 attendees. I want you on the main stage." Zara was quiet for a moment. "When is the conference?" 6 weeks. "Yes," she said. "I'll be there." She ended the call. She sat in Abena's guest room. She thought about the Tuesday morning. Burden. She opened her laptop. She started preparing the presentation. Day 4. She responded to the 3 corporate inquiry emails. The first was from a regional bank that had a women's entrepreneurship initiative and was looking for curriculum partners. The second was from a national nonprofit focused on economic empowerment that had seen her program mentioned in a blog post. The third was from a mid-sized corporation with a supplier diversity program that wanted to offer business training to their network of women-owned vendors. She responded to all 3. By end of day, she had a call scheduled with each. She also launched the next program cohort, 31 people on the wait list. Cohort capacity, 20. She sent the enrollment link at 9 in the morning. By noon, 20 spots were filled, 11 people still waiting. She added a second cohort. Music, building, quietly accelerating. Day 5. The first corporate call. The bank's women's initiative director was a woman named Teresa, who had been trying to find a curriculum partner for 2 years and had been frustrated by programs that were either too basic or too generic. They talked for 90 minutes. By the end of the call, Teresa had a proposal request on her desk, and Zara had a sense of what a partnership would look like. The bank licensing her curriculum for their program participants, Zara providing facilitation and customization, a financial arrangement that would more than double her current monthly revenue. She drove back to Abina's house that evening and sat in the car in the driveway for 10 minutes. Not from grief, from the specific feeling of something enormous becoming real. She was 36 years old. She had $47 in her personal account 7 days ago. She had been called a burden, and she was sitting in a driveway with a corporate partnership proposal on her desk and 2 program cohorts full and a main stage invitation from the largest Black women's entrepreneurship network in the Southeast. She called her mother. "Mommy, Zara." "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I need to tell you something." She told her everything. When she finished, her mother was quiet for a long moment. "Your father built his firm from the second bedroom," she said finally. "You remember that?" "I remember." "You were 5 years old. He had 3 clients and a desk he bought at a garage sale. Your aunties thought he was crazy, said he should get a real job." A pause. He kept going anyway. "I know." "You always had his stubbornness," her mother said. "I thought it would get you into trouble. It might still." "No," her mother's voice was very certain. "It's going to make you day 6. The journalist called. She had pitched Zara's story to Forbes 3 weeks ago, before the Tuesday morning, before any of it, based on a recommendation from Dr. Pierce and an anonymous tip from Keturah, who had taken it upon herself to advocate for her mentor without being asked. The journalist's name was Maya. She was direct. "We're doing a feature on women entrepreneurs who are disrupting traditional business education. Your name came up in 3 separate conversations. I've been trying to reach you." "I know. I apologize for the delay. I've had a complicated week, I heard. I'm sorry." A pause that was professional but also genuinely human. "Are you okay?" "I'm better than I was 6 days ago." "Then I want to hear about that too," Maya said. "If you're willing. The story of what you've built is remarkable on its own. But the context of how you built it, in the margins, without support, while being actively told it was worthless, that's the story people need to read." Zara thought about it. She thought about every woman who had ever been called a burden, every woman who had been told her work was a hobby, and every woman who had been building something in secret because the person closest to her had made belief feel dangerous. "Yes," she said, "I'm willing." Day 7. The interview. 3 hours. Zara's full story. The curriculum, the pilot program, the corporate inquiries, the conference invitation, and yes, the Tuesday morning. The word that had been meant to diminish her and had instead, in the strange alchemy of a woman who had nothing left to protect, become the last obstacle to her doing exactly what she had always been capable of. At the end of the interview, Maya said, "One more question. If David is watching this, what do you want him to know?" Zara thought about it. She thought about 9 years. She thought about the Tuesday morning and the kitchen floor and the $47. She thought about everything she had built in 7 days and 3 years before them and what she was going to build in the year ahead. "I don't want him to know anything," she said. "What I want is for every woman who has been called a burden to know something." She looked at Maya directly. "What they said about you is not a reflection of what you are. It's a reflection of what they needed you to believe so they could keep you manageable." A pause. "Stop being manageable." Maya smiled. "That's your headline," she said. The article went live on a Thursday morning. Zara was at Abina's kitchen table with coffee when her phone began. Not ringing, vibrating continuously, a sustained physical trembling that did not stop for 4 hours. The article's headline was simple. She was called a financial burden. She built a business empire. Anyway, Maya had written it with the specificity and warmth of someone who understood that the most powerful business stories are human stories first. She had written about the curriculum, the pilot program, the women whose businesses had been transformed. She had written about the Elevate Network partnership and the corporate inquiries and the conference invitation. And she had written about Tuesday morning, not in a way that was salacious or focused on David, in a way that was focused on Zara, on what a woman carries when she is building something in secret, on what becomes possible when the secret can finally be spoken. The response was immediate and overwhelming. By noon, the article had been shared 40,000 times. By evening, it was at 200,000. And the comments were not the generic empowerment comments of strangers who had clicked past a headline. They were specific, personal. Women writing paragraphs about their own Tuesday mornings, their own words, their own secret businesses and dismissed ideas and husbands and partners who had called what they were building a hobby. I've been called a burden for 4 years, and I have a wait list of 60 people for my program. Thank you for making me feel less alone. I showed my husband this article, and he said nothing, and I understood finally that his silence was the answer to a question I had been asking for 6 years. I quit my marriage last month after 11 years. I have been terrified every day since. Today is the first day I have felt brave. Zara read every comment. She sat at Abina's kitchen table and read hundreds of comments from women who had been where she had been and were looking for evidence that what waited on the other side was worth the terror of getting there. She called Gloria. "The website crashed," Gloria said by way of greeting. "What?" "The traffic volume. The servers couldn't handle it. I've been on the phone with the host for 2 hours. We're migrating to a platform that can scale." A pause. "Zara, the wait list has 240 new sign-ups since this morning. 240, and 3 more corporate inquiry emails, and a speaking agent who wants to represent you, and a publisher asking if you've considered writing a book." She looked at the kitchen. She thought about the $47. So she thought about the word burden and what it had cost him nothing to say and what it had cost her everything to hear and what she had built in the space between the hearing and the refusing to be defined by it. "Gloria," she said, "clear my calendar for tomorrow. I need to think." David called that afternoon. She saw his name on the screen. She thought about answering. She thought about what she would say. She thought about what he would say. The recalibration, the backtracking, the version of himself he would perform now that the world had seen what he had dismissed. She put the phone face down. She did not call him back. Not that day, not ever. There was nothing he could say that she needed to hear. She already had everything she needed. She had built it herself. She stayed with Abina for 3 weeks, and not because she could not afford to leave. The corporate partnership with the bank had been finalized in week 2, and the advance from the speaking agency had cleared, and she had signed a lease on a 1-bedroom apartment that was entirely, specifically hers. She stayed because Abina's kitchen was the place where she had been allowed to be human about all of it, and she needed that. The Forbes article had made her, overnight, a figure. A narrative, a symbol of something that women needed symbols of. She understood this and she was grateful for it, and she also knew that symbols are required to be coherent and inspiring in ways that human beings are not. At Abina's kitchen table, she was allowed to be incoherent, to be sad about 9 years, and even when the sadness did not make linear sense, alongside the business growth and the Forbes feature and the conference invitation. To be angry at herself for the years she had spent making herself smaller. To be afraid of what came next, even when what came next looked from the outside like triumph. "You're allowed to feel all of it," Abina told her one night over wine, the way Abina told her things, directly, without softening, with the particular love of someone who respects you too much to lie to you. You're allowed to be proud and devastated and terrified and excited all at the same time. That's not contradiction. That's just being alive. "The internet thinks I'm healed," Zara said. "The internet doesn't know anything. The comments..." "The comments are real," Abena said. Those women are real. What you gave them by telling your story is real. But you don't have to perform healing for their benefit. You're allowed to still be in it. I am still in it. I know. Abena refilled her glass. That's what I'm saying. It was Abena who had first encouraged her 5 years ago to take the business idea seriously. It was Abena who had been the first person she called when she had an idea, and the first person who pushed back when the idea needed pushing, and the first person who celebrated when it worked. It was Abena who, in year 3 of the marriage, had sat across a restaurant table and said, carefully, Zara, is David good for you? And Zara had said yes immediately before she had thought about it, with the reflexive defensiveness of someone protecting something they are not yet ready to examine. Abena had not pushed, and she had stayed. And here she was, 3 years later, making jollof rice for a woman who had just been featured in Forbes and was crying into a wine glass because the grief and the triumph were the same size, and she did not know what to do with either. He told me for 9 years that I was not building anything, Zara said. He was wrong. I know he was wrong. I know that now. But for 9 years I also believed him a little. That's what I'm grieving, not him. The years I spent believing him. Abena was quiet for a moment. Then grieve them, she said, and then stop. A pause. You don't have to forgive him. You don't have to understand him. You just have to stop giving those years more of your present than they deserve. Zara looked at her. When did you get so wise? I've been this wise the whole time, Abena said. You just weren't listening. Oi. The Atlanta conference was 6 weeks after the Tuesday morning. She had never spoken to 3,000 people before. She had spoken to rooms of 20, 30, 50. She had taught her curriculum to cohorts of women who came in skeptical and left with spreadsheets and strategies, and more importantly, a belief in their own competence that had been built on evidence rather than encouragement. But 3,000 people was different. She spent 4 weeks preparing. Not the content. She knew the content. She had been living it for 3 years. She prepared the framing. How do you tell a room full of women who are building things in secret, in the margins, in the spaces between other people's needs, that what they are doing is not a hobby? That the gap between where they are and where they are trying to get is not evidence of inadequacy, but evidence of the specific obstacles that have been placed in the path of exactly these women doing exactly this work? She thought about her pilot program graduates. She thought about Keturah, who had doubled her revenue, about Patricia from church, who now had a hospital contract, about the 31 women who had joined her wait list after a podcast 8,000 people had heard. She thought about the 240 women who had signed up for her program the day the Forbes article ran. She built the presentation around them, not around herself, around what became possible when a woman was given the specific tools and the specific context and the specific community that matched her actual situation. The Elevate Network Spring Conference was held at a hotel in downtown Atlanta. 3,000 women, every one of them building something, some of them in secret, some of them with support, all of them in the specific and relentless work of building something in a world that had not always made space for what they were building. Zara stood in the wings of the main stage and looked at the audience. She thought about the kitchen. She thought about $47. She took a breath. She walked out. The first 3 minutes were the hardest. The audience was warm. They had been there all day. The energy in the room was alive and generous. But the size of it was still something she had to absorb. She let herself absorb it. Then she said, I want to start by asking you a question. How many of you are building something right now that the most important person in your life has called a hobby? The hands went up, hundreds of them. How many of you have been told that what you're doing is not serious? Not a real business? Not worth the time you're putting into it? More hands. How many of you have been called a burden? The room went very quiet. And then a different kind of movement, not hands raised, but the particular stillness of recognition. The specific silence of a room full of women who had heard that word and were not yet ready to raise their hands to it. "I was called a burden," Zara said, 9 days ago, by the man I had been married to for 9 years, over coffee. He was gone by noon. That night I had $47 in my bank account. Today I have a Forbes Feature, a corporate partnership, a full program cohort, a second cohort that filled in 2 hours, and a conference invitation from the most important network in our industry." She paused. "I am not telling you this to brag. I am telling you this because I want you to understand something critical. The gap between where you are and where you are trying to get is not, it has never been, a gap in your ability. It is a gap in your conditions." She built the presentation from there. 90 minutes. The framework she had developed. The specific, actionable, contextually appropriate tools for building sustainable businesses as Black women entrepreneurs. The case studies, the numbers, the evidence, and underneath all of it, on the things she had come to understand in the 9 days since Tuesday, the people who tell you that you are not building anything are not describing your reality. They are describing their fear of it. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. Dr. Pierce found her backstage afterward. "I've been doing this for 15 years, she said. "I have never seen a room of 3,000 women respond the way they just responded." "The material is good," Zara said. "The material is excellent. But that's not why they responded the way they did." Dr. Pierce looked at her directly. "They responded because you told the truth, the specific, uncomfortable, documented truth, and you let them see themselves in it. That's what I built the curriculum for." "I know." Dr. Pierce smiled. "Which is why I want to talk about what we build next." Adzi, he called 7 times, texted 14 times, sent 2 emails. Zara read the emails because emails she could read at her own pace and put down when she needed to, and they did not require her to hear his voice, which she was not yet ready to hear. The first email was what she had expected. Measured, careful, performing remorse without actually offering it. He was sorry she had felt hurt. He had not meant things the way they had come out. He had been under enormous pressure at work and had taken it out on her unfairly. He would like to talk. She did not respond. The second email was different. She read it twice. He had seen the Forbes article. "I didn't know," he wrote. "I genuinely did not know what you had built. I know that doesn't excuse what I said, but I need you to understand that I did not say what I said knowing what I know now. If I had known—" She stopped reading. She sat with that sentence. If I had known. If he had known she was generating $57,000, he would not have called her a burden. If he had known she had a corporate partnership pending, he would not have walked out. If he had known Forbes was going to call, he would not have said what he said over coffee. And she understood, with a clarity that settled in her chest like something finally resolving, that this was the entire problem. Not what he had said, but the conditional nature of his respect, the fact that his belief in her required evidence he could verify with metrics he trusted. The fact that her belief in herself, her 3 years of 5 o'clock mornings and rebuilt curriculum and pilot program graduates and wait lists and all of it, had never been sufficient evidence because she was the one presenting it, and he had decided at some point in their marriage that she was not a credible source on the subject of her own capability. She closed the email. She opened a new document. She wrote down everything she wanted to say to him, 4 pages. Then she closed it without sending it. She did not need him to hear it. She needed herself to have said it. That was enough. She deleted the document. She blocked his number. She went back to work. Her friend Nana called that evening. "Did you see what David posted on LinkedIn?" She had not. She looked. David Cole, senior portfolio manager, had published a thought leadership piece about the importance of supporting entrepreneurial partners, about recognizing potential in people you love before the market validates it for you, about the mistakes that successful men make in underestimating the women beside them. It was beautifully written. It was also, clearly, about her. He had not named her. He did not need to. Everyone in their professional circle knew. The comments were mixed. Some praised his vulnerability and self-awareness. Some saw through it immediately, women, mostly, who recognized the shape of a man rewriting himself into a better role in a story he had tried to end. Zara read it once. She felt nothing that surprised her. She called Nana back. "He published a piece," she said. "I saw it. He made himself the lesson." "Of course he did," Nana said. "That's what they do. You do the hard thing and they write the article about learning from watching you." "At least he's learning," Zara said. "Are you angry?" She thought about it honestly. "No," she said. "I'm just done. There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Anger still has him at the center. Done means I've moved on." A pause. I've moved on. She meant it. She really, specifically, entirely meant it. The year after Tuesday morning was the hardest and the most alive she had ever felt, both simultaneously, without contradiction. She signed the lease on her apartment 6 weeks after leaving the house she had shared with David. 1 bedroom, 3rd floor, a window in the kitchen that let in the morning light in a way that made her want to work, and a window in the bedroom that looked at the sky and made her want to rest. Both felt important. And she had not had a space that was specifically hers since before the marriage. She spent 2 days arranging it, moving furniture, hanging things on the walls, setting up her workspace exactly as she wanted it. Desk facing the window, natural light, no compromise, no consideration of anyone else's preference. She stood in the middle of the living room on the second evening. She was 36 years old. She had $47 9 weeks ago. She looked at her apartment. She had done this. The bank partnership was finalized in month 2. Zara's curriculum would be licensed to the bank's Women's Entrepreneurship Program. She would provide 6 facilitation sessions per year and an annual curriculum update. The financial arrangement was the largest single contract she had ever signed. She sat across the table from Teresa at the bank's offices and signed her name and thought about the Tuesday morning and thought about nothing, actually, because she was present and focused, and this was the work, and the work deserved her full attention. After she signed, Teresa said, "I want to say something off the record." "Of course." "I've been trying to find a curriculum partner for 2 years. I have sat across this table from 8 different vendors in that time. None of them built what you built." She paused. "Do you know what made yours different? Tell me. You built it from the inside. You built it as someone who is the target demographic, not someone studying the target demographic. Someone living it." Teresa met her eyes. "That cannot be manufactured, and it cannot be replicated by someone who hasn't lived it." Zara thought about David calling it a hobby. "No," she said, "it cannot. The book deal came in month 4. A publisher who had seen the Forbes article and then seen the conference video, someone had filmed her presentation and it had circulated widely, reached out through her speaking agent. They wanted a book about her framework, not a memoir, a business book. Practical, specific, grounded in the methodology she had developed and tested and refined. She negotiated the terms with the particular confidence of someone who understood, finally, that her work had a value that did not require someone else's validation to be real. She signed the contract. She started writing. She wrote the book in the mornings, from 5 to 8, before the rest of the day began. The same hours she had used to build the curriculum, and the same hours David had slept through while she built the thing he called a hobby. She dedicated it to her mother and to the 31 women on the original wait list who had believed in the work before the world did. Month 6, her second corporate partnership. The national nonprofit she had been in conversation with since the week after Tuesday morning had completed their evaluation process and was ready to commit. This partnership was different in scope. It involved training 1,500 women across 12 cities over 18 months. Zara would need to scale. She hired her first employee, Abena's cousin, Ifia, who had a background in program management and the specific ability to take a complex operation and make it function without drama. Then a second employee, a curriculum developer named Josephine, who had been one of the women from her second cohort and had, over 6 months, demonstrated a grasp of the material and the pedagogy that Zara recognized immediately as the kind of understanding that came from having lived the problem. She had 3 employees by month 8, a team, her team, building what she had built, carrying it forward. She called her father in month 9. He answered on the second ring. "Zara, how are you?" "I'm good, Daddy. I'm really good." Good is different from really good. It is. She looked out the window at the morning light. "I wanted to tell you something. Tell me. The business. It's real now. Not just real for me. Real in the way you'd recognize. Revenue, employees, partnerships, a book." Her father was quiet for a moment. "Come home," he said finally. "Now come for dinner. Bring your laptop. Show me." She drove to Charlotte that weekend, sat at the same kitchen table where she had grown up watching her father build his firm from nothing. She showed him the numbers. He studied them with the particular attention of a man who had spent 40 years reading financial statements. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "Your grandfather built a shop in Kumasi from nothing," he said. "Your uncle built a school in Takoradi from nothing. I built this firm from nothing." He reached across the table and took her hand. "You come from builders, Zara. We don't stop." She held his hand. She thought about the Tuesday morning and the $47 and everything in between. "We don't stop," she agreed. 18 months after Tuesday morning, the apartment was the same. The woman in it was not, and not unrecognizable. She was still Zara, still the person who woke at 5 and loved jollof rice, and called Abena too late at night and cried at her mother's voice on the phone. But something had settled. Something that had been searching for its place for 9 years had found it. She was 37 years old. She had a business that generated more in a month than David had ever believed she was capable of generating in a year. She had a team of 6 people who were building it with her. She had a book coming out in 3 months that her editor described as the most practically useful business resource she had published in 15 years. She had the Elevate Network partnership with Dr. Pierce, which had become something neither of them had fully anticipated, not just a program delivery arrangement, but a genuine collaboration between 2 women who had built things from very different starting points and discovered that what they were building was pointing in the same direction. She had Abena across town and her parents 2 hours away, and Nana and Gloria and Keturah and the graduates of 7 cohorts who checked in and updated her, and sometimes asked if they could come back and learn more. She had her apartment, her window, her morning light. She did not have David. She thought about this sometimes, not with grief anymore, with something more like curiosity, about the version of herself that had stayed, that had kept building in secret and kept managing his narrative and kept accepting the diminishment because the alternative had felt impossible. She had thought the alternative was losing everything. She had lost everything and found everything she had been trying to build under it. She gave a talk at a women's business conference in Houston. After the talk, a woman came up to her, 50s, well-dressed, the particular posture of someone who has been professionally competent for a long time. "My husband says my business is a hobby," the woman said. She said it quietly, with the practiced neutrality of someone who had been saying painful things neutrally for so long it had become automatic. Zara looked at her. "How long have you been building it?" "6 years." "And in 6 years, what have you built?" the woman told her. It was not nothing. It was not close to nothing. It was 6 years of specific, sustained work that deserved to be called what it was. "Listen to me," Zara said. "What he calls it is not what it is. What he believes about it is not the truth of it. The truth of it is in the 6 years. The truth of it is in what you just told me." The woman's eyes filled. I'm terrified, she said. I know. I don't know if I can do it without— You've been doing it without, Zara said. For 6 years. You've been doing it without his belief and without his support and probably against his active skepticism. And you're still here. And what you built is real. She pressed the woman's hand. Stop asking for permission, she said. You have already proven you don't need it. She drove back to her hotel that evening. She sat in the room. She thought about the Tuesday morning. She thought about what the Tuesday morning had cost and what it had given. She thought about the specific, irreplaceable gift of being forced, finally, to stop building in secret, of being pushed, by humiliation, of all things, into the light. She opened her laptop. She started writing the foreword to her book. The worst thing that was ever said to me, she wrote, became the truest thing about me. Not because he was right, because the moment I stopped trying to prove him wrong and started building for the women who needed what I had built, that was the moment I became exactly what he said I wasn't. Not a burden, the builder. She looked at what she had written. She kept it. Every word. The book launched on a Tuesday. She had chosen the publication date deliberately. The Builder's Blueprint, a business framework for Black women entrepreneurs who are done building in secret. The title had gone through 11 iterations. The final version had come to her at 5 in the morning on a Wednesday, which she had come to think of as her best hour, the hour when the noise was low enough that the real thoughts could be heard. In secret. That was the phrase that had changed everything when Maya had written it in the Forbes article. The phrase that women had responded to with the particular recognition of something true being named for the first time. She was not going to waste it. The launch event was at a bookstore in Atlanta, 300 capacity. The line started forming 2 hours before doors opened. She stood inside and looked at the line through the window and thought about the Tuesday morning and the word burden and the $47. Abena stood beside her. You did this, Abena said. We did this, Zara replied. Every woman in that line did this. Every woman who shared the article. Every woman who enrolled in the program. Every woman who showed up to the conference and raised her hand when I asked who had been called a burden. She paused. I wrote the book, but they're the reason it exists. You can be both, Abena said. The person who wrote it and the person who wrote it for them. Those aren't different things. Zara looked at the line. I know, she said. I'm learning to hold both. The event lasted 4 hours. She read from the book, answered questions, signed copies for 3 hours without stopping. And the questions were the ones she had been asked 100 times since the Forbes article, and were not less meaningful for their repetition. How do I know when my idea is ready? How do I handle the people who don't believe in what I'm building? How do I price my work when I've spent years being told it's not worth much? How do I start when I have nothing? She answered every question, not with the generic empowerment language of someone performing inspiration, with the specific, documented, tested framework she had built from 3 years of 5 o'clock mornings. Your idea is ready when it has been tested by someone other than you, she said to the first question. Not perfect, not complete, just real enough for another person to interact with and give you information back. The people who don't believe in what you're building are telling you about their limitations, not yours, she said to the second. Your job is not to convince them. Your job is to build the evidence that makes the argument for itself. You price your work based on the value it creates for the person receiving it, she said to the third, not based on what you feel comfortable asking for. Those are very different numbers, and you need to know the difference. You start, she said to the fourth. That's all. You start with what you have. You document everything. You refine based on what the evidence tells you. You do not wait for conditions that feel right. You create the conditions by starting. The book hit the New York Times bestseller list 6 weeks after launch. She found out on a Saturday morning. She was at her kitchen table, 5 o'clock, working. Her phone buzzed with a message from her editor. She read it. She put the phone down. She sat with it for a moment. Then she called her mother. "Mommy, Zara, why are you calling at 5 in the morning? I need to tell you something." She told her. Her mother did not say anything for a long time. Then, "Your father is going to cry. I know. He's going to try not to, and he's going to cry anyway. I know, I'm going to let him." A pause. "Zara, yes, your grandfather would have—" Her mother stopped. Started again. "He would have said this was always going to happen, that it was just a question of when you stopped letting other people's doubt be louder than your own knowing." Zara pressed her hand to her mouth. "I'm not going to cry," she said. "Yes, you are," her mother replied. She was right. 2 years after Tuesday morning. She is 38 years old. The business has 14 employees. The curriculum has been delivered to 4,700 women across 22 states. The book is in its 4th printing. The bank partnership has been renewed and expanded. 3 new corporate partnerships have been added. The Elevate Network collaboration has produced a grant program that has distributed $240,000 to early-stage Black women entrepreneurs in the past year. She is building a training center, physical space, her own building, where women can come and build together, where the building does not have to happen in secret. She is also, she should say, happy, not in the dramatic way of someone who has triumphed over something and is performing the triumph. In the quiet, and specific way of someone who wakes up in the morning and the first feeling is not dread. The first feeling is purpose. She has not been in a relationship since David. She has not been ready. She is becoming ready, slowly, in the way that readiness builds when it is not rushed. She has learned what she needs from a partner, and she has learned, more importantly, that she does not need a partner to build the life she is building. The life does not have a vacancy. It has space for someone who adds to it. That is a different thing. She knows the difference now. She speaks at a university business school. MBA students, half of them women, a quarter of them Black. She tells them the Tuesday morning story because she tells it everywhere now, not because it is the most important thing about her, but because it is the thing that most women in the room need to hear. After the talk, a young woman approaches. 24. Nervous energy. The particular intensity of someone with something she has been holding on to. "I have an idea," the woman says. "I've been working on it for 2 years. My boyfriend says it's not a real business." Zara looks at her. "Tell me about the idea," the woman tells her. "It takes 8 minutes. The idea is specific. Tested. The woman has 3 paying clients already." "You have a real business," Zara says. He says, "I know what he says." Zara looks at her directly. "I'm telling you what I see. 3 paying clients is a real business. 2 years of work is a real business. The gap between where you are and where you want to be is not evidence that it isn't real. It's evidence of where you are in the process." Like the woman's eyes fill. "How do I get him to see it?" "That," Zara says gently, "is the wrong question." Then what's the right question? The right question is, what do you need to do next to build the evidence that makes the truth of this undeniable? A pause. Not to him, to yourself. She gives the woman her card. She tells her to email when she is ready to talk about next steps. 3 weeks later, the email arrives. She responds. She always responds. Because she remembers what it cost to build in secret, and she is building, one conversation at a time, a world where fewer women have to. Zara's story is not a story about a man who was wrong, although he was. It is not a story about deserving better, although she did. It is a story about the specific, irreplaceable cost of building in secret. Not about what happens to a woman's work when she is required to keep it small to make the people around her comfortable. About what becomes possible when the keeping small is no longer an option. When the Tuesday morning happens. When the word burden is said out loud. When the thing that was meant to diminish her becomes instead the last wall she needed removed. There is something I want to say directly to the women watching this. If you are building something right now that the most important person in your life calls a hobby, if you are in the 5 o'clock mornings and the secret spreadsheets and the pilot programs tested with 3 women from your church, if you have been called a burden or made to feel like one, and or quietly trained over years to believe that what you are building does not count, hear this. The evidence of your work is real, whether or not anyone is looking at it. The value of what you are building is real, whether or not anyone is measuring it. And the Tuesday morning, if it comes, will not be the end. It will be the removal of the last obstacle between you and what you have already built. Hit the like button. It takes 1 second, and it tells the algorithm that stories like this need to reach the women who need them. Leave a comment. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me if you are building something in secret right now. Tell me if you have had your Tuesday morning. I read every single comment and I will reply. Share this video with a woman who needs to hear it. And subscribe with notifications on, because every single week I bring you stories of women who built something from what was meant to break them. I will see you in the next one.